Okay, I think this is working. Hi guys, I'm back. I was going to make a different video today, so I was ready to come back on here and do a kind of roundup of the Meghan and Harry situation, which I have been following recently. I've been unwell mentally and physically, just been going through some stuff, but I'm ready to make my big return. So I was getting ready for that this weekend, but then something happened in the political world which I wanted to talk about, and I didn't know whether I should make this or not, but I feel like I should. And I feel like it kind of ties in with other stuff we talk about on the channel, which is the way that the media frames certain things and abuse dynamics, essentially, which is what I'm interested in. And you'll know that, you know, with the Meghan and Harry videos, if you're someone who's watched those things, I'm most interested in the abuse dynamics at play, because they're abuse dynamics you might see in romantic relationships, in friendships, in family relationships, in workplaces. You know, the British media and what they've done with Meghan Markle, for example, little rhyme there, what they've done is they've run a smear campaign against her. And they have, over a long period of time, they've created this kind of villain figure, so that whatever she does and however she reacts to her treatment, and Meghan is exemplary in this, I've said this before, but, you know, it's so, I'm so glad we have her as an example, and I don't mean that I'm glad that she's gone through this horribleness, because I'd obviously rather she didn't, but the fact that, you know, she really does carry herself so well that it's kind of exposed them as how ridiculous the media are. You know, because this woman has done nothing wrong. She's been nothing but gracious. She's been nothing but polite. I've never seen her lose her temper. I've never seen her say anything in anger or in frustration. And you'll know if you've been in that sort of dynamic before. The problem often is that the victim will become frustrated and the victim will become angry, and they will react to their abuse, and then their reaction is used to further hurt them, right? Because the context gets stripped away. So, for example, with Meghan and Harry, let's say the Oprah interview, you know, people saying, oh, you know, they started it by doing that. When if you actually research it, and again, if you're new here, I'm not pro the royal family. I'm interested in the royals in terms of history and stuff like that, but I'm a socialist. It's not my thing. But, you know, to be completely fair, reading up on it, I thought, wait a minute, something dodgy's going on here. They did this to Diana, they're doing it to Harry and Meghan. It's the same thing, you know, it's the same process. They stripped out all the context, which they did with Diana, and they acted like, you know, oh, they drew the first blood. They, you know, they talked, you know, they spoke about their experiences, which is ridiculous, because if you look at what's actually gone on, you're looking at, with Diana, you're looking at years and years of extreme coercive control and psychological abuse, making her think that she was crazy, painting her as being hysterical, using her youth against her, even though she was deliberately chosen because she was so young and they hoped she'd be more malleable. And anything that Diana did, which is a natural response, you know, she's quite an emotional person, it was, you know, oh, you know, she's crazy, or she's bad, or she's difficult, you know, they love to do that. And the same thing happened with Meghan, but with the added element, which is the racism on top. So even though Meghan could not carry herself with any more dignity and grace, they've still done everything they can to tie her into a racist stereotype of an angry black woman. And, you know, I've been keeping up with the front of the magazines, and I will do a proper video on this and we'll go through them, because I like to do those. But all these stories every month, every week, presenting her as this difficult person who's starting all the problems, right? It began with her, and if only she'd been quiet. And you know, Kate Middleton being presented as this calm presence, this dignified presence, and, you know, if she feels anger sometimes it's fine because she's having to put up with evil Meghan Markle. So if we understand that framing, what they're doing with Kate and Meghan in the media, for example, I feel like if we understand that, we can apply that to different things. And I've spoken before about how they smeared a politician called Jeremy Corbyn in this country. They're doing the same thing with a lot of left-wing MPs. People like Diane Abbott, who's suffering extreme racism, and she's being attacked by the kind of centre at the moment, because the centre here is shifting right, which means that people who are decent left-wingers, you know, they're not even radical, you know, they're really not radical compared to other countries and stuff, are being presented as these dangerous terrible individuals. And you know, with Diane Abbott, for example, they've tried to make her out to be stupid and to be angry and to be dangerous even, you know. Anyway, okay, I'm getting off the point. But if we understand that with Kate Middleton and we understand that with Meghan Markle, and again, I have no ill will towards Kate Middleton as a person. I don't know her. All I know is I know the persona that the firm and the media are trying to put across, whether that's for the royal family's sake, for their propaganda, or if it's serving a bigger sort of political aim, which is we're getting more right wing here. They're creating all this panic about, oh no, like immigrants coming in, refugees coming in, you know, oh no, they're coming here and ruining everything. And that's been very extreme recently, which is interesting if you look at Ukrainian refugees who've come here, which I'm glad are here. You know, I'm really, really glad, because I think that if you can help people who are, you know, fleeing from something terrible, you should do it. But it did really unearth the fact that, you know, when we see white refugees, not to say that all Ukrainians are white, but in the media, you know, they're portrayed as, you know, white people, so like us here. I say like us, I'm mixed race, but, you know, that's the vibe. You know, they're safe people coming over to seek refuge. And then you'd see a similar thing, you know, for example, you see a refugee who's come over from somewhere in Africa or from the Middle East, you know, from Syria or Afghanistan or somewhere like that. And they'd be presented as a danger, like it's different. And also in this country, sorry if you're not from here to get into this, but we've got a difficult situation where the right wing are clever because they are using people of colour to front their most racist campaigns. So it's difficult. It's very, very confusing. There's so much stuff at play here. But basically what I wanted to talk about is, so let's talk about what's happened recently with Israel, Palestine, and what's going on at the moment. And I feel like it's so difficult to talk about it, because I feel like, first of all, I'm a pacifist. I'm a pacifist. And it's not that I think everyone else has to be a pacifist. I just am. Personally, I'm Christian, and I believe that's just my belief system. I also believe that when people are occupied and oppressed, they have the right to defend themselves and they have the right to fight the occupier. I do believe that. I mean, I'm half English and I'm half Indian. So, you know, it's complicated. And I feel like when we look at colonization and we look at oppression, I feel like it does no good in terms of the way the media presents it and the way history presents it, to strip out the context, because how does that help in the future? You know, so for example, when it comes to India were treated appallingly. You know, India was colonized, India was oppressed, and there were different uprisings at the time, some of them violent, some of them non-violent, and eventually they won their independence. But, you know, the way they were being portrayed at the time was, you know, all these dangerous brown people that need to be civilized and they need us to, you know, enforce law and order. And when you actually look at India and how, like, complex it was, you know, different religions, you know, getting on side by side, it's sad how much that happens, you know, when power gets involved. You know, communities which have been so multicultural just fall apart, and hatred comes in and enmity happens, and, you know, you've got that whole situation. I won't get into the situation right now because that's gone awful. But what I will say is, looking back at that, you know, even now when we talk about immigration and things like that, you know, people try and present Indian people who came over, you know, like my family, like, oh, like, you know, why did they come here, kind of thing. Like, why did they just, there's no reason to come over here. And it's like, if you don't teach about the kind of entwined relationship between Britain and India, right, and how Britain basically took over India, used its resources, took the resources back to Britain, you know, people like Winston Churchill, there was mass starvation happening to the Indian people. You know, Winston Churchill was famously incredibly racist against Indian people. You know, people don't want to talk about that because, you know, obviously during the war, he was, you know, against Hitler, which is good. But they also don't want to talk about the difficulty, which is that, but you know what, he was also a huge racist, and look what he did to the Indians, right? So that's the history of places like India. And that kind of damage that's done when you're under occupation, I mean, think about Ireland as well. The kind of damage that's done when you're in that situation, when you are occupied, when you actually grow up in it generation after generation after generation, it's complicated. And it's very difficult. And to deny occupation and to deny histories like we do in this country, like we don't teach about like Black British history very much. You know, there's still people who think, oh, we shouldn't be teaching about Black history. Why do we teach Black history? And it's like, it's not to single out a group and be like, oh, it's this particular group. It's because these are the people that we've kind of erased their histories. You know, we never learned at school fully about, you know, colonialism. Anyway, yeah, so I'm incredibly anti-occupation, obviously. It's wrong, it's an abuse dynamic. You can't occupy another place. And, you know, I'm British and Indian. So, you know, it's not that all British people are evil people because of it, but it is wicked, I think, to act like that didn't happen, because we sit there and we kind of flaunt all the great things we have, and we do have good things here, you know, I'm not saying we don't, but we're not better or worse than anyone else. We have a dark history with Britain. We took a lot of resources from other people. We've still got a lot of those resources. You know, this myth that we are this mighty, powerful place in the world that gets to tell other people how to behave, it's not accurate. You know, the reason we have that power is because we colonized, because we had a lot of that wealth, and a lot of places that we see as third world or backwards or whatever are places that we've literally stolen things from. You know, we've actually stunted a lot of growth. And that's the sort of thing you can never get back. You know, you'll never know now, we will never know how different societies would have developed and all the brilliant things that would have come into the world. And again, I'm not saying that, you know, people living in Britain today need to be like hated or anything, or we're evil people. But it is wrong, I think, to look back at our history and what we do have here and not acknowledge that stuff, because it's gaslighting, right? It's not acknowledging that it was built off the backs of people that were abused. And it's the same, you know, with America. A lot of you guys are from the USA, but, you know, when you look at slavery and when you look at all that, you know, and then people turn around and say, oh, you know, America's so great and we want people of colour out. It's like, but do you understand what you're built on here? Quite literally what you're built on. Anyway, so I kind of feel like we have a responsibility, especially in a place like Britain, which has occupied, right, and which has been an empire and which has done some really dark stuff, to try and, you know, make sure that doesn't happen anymore. So I'm against occupation and colonialism. So the situation with Israel and Palestine in terms of the media. So obviously there have been some really awful attacks, really horrible. I think being on social media, I follow a lot of people from Palestine and a lot of people from Israel. I've got family in Israel, kind of distant family. I'm not really in communication with them, but I've got family in Israel. And I've got a lot of people, I follow a lot of people who are on the ground in Palestine, because the media, Palestine has been under occupation for 70 years, right? It's a dark history. So we have a lot to do with it. You know, Britain was occupying Palestine before this situation. And the way things are being reported right now, that's not to say that, you know, I feel like crazy even saying this, but it's absolutely horrific to see any innocent person get hurt, and I feel like that across the board. Like it's horrible. It's really, really horrible. And I've been saying prayers, and you know, that probably sounds really useless, but to me that's a meaningful thing. So I don't mean that to sound like ridiculous. It's just, you know, to me that feels right. But the way it's being reported on is as though, you know, it denies 70 years of oppression and occupation, and the Nakba, the forced, the displacement of Palestinians, you know, and it was a dark, you know, the whole process is really dark when you read about it, and it's ongoing. You know, we've got a really massive open air prison, huge, which people can't flee from, which is mostly made up of children. You know, people are, their water is controlled, their electricity is controlled, there are checkpoints, you know, children get arrested for throwing stones. And then the world kind of, you know, Israel breaks international law regularly in occupation in the way it treats the Palestinians. And I honestly feel like the way the media is reporting on it now and has reported on it is partially to blame for the attacks we're seeing right now on the innocent Israelis and people in Gaza right now. You know, like, I don't understand why, if what people really wanted was for there to be peace, right, and for innocent people, all innocent people to be safe, I cannot possibly understand why we would have a media and politicians who have at every turn refused to engage with the fact that Israel is occupying Palestine, that the Palestinians are suffering. Like, the peaceful protest, BDS, which is boycott, divestment and sanctions, which is to boycott goods which are created and sold on stolen land, peaceful protest, even that is unacceptable to people here. Ridiculously, you'll get called anti-Semitic for that, which is absolutely ridiculous. As I see it, you know, in order for everyone to be safe there, if a country's being occupied, if Palestine's being occupied, the people who've been occupied there for a long, long time and will have grown up, you know, seeing an abuse of power, an abuse of authority, their amenities cut off, their families dying, you know, their homes being destroyed, and seeing the world do nothing. Like, at every single turn where we could have helped in some way for there not to be pain, we haven't, right? Because we haven't done anything. We haven't done anything. We haven't even peacefully said, look, this is bad. This occupation is bad. And I can't even imagine what it's like to grow up under that occupation, you know? So this focus on the way that the attacks have happened recently, to me, feels very skewed. And please don't think that's me. Like, I feel sick, some of the stuff, you know, innocent people. Just, you know, I'm a pacifist, so I get upset when I see violence. Honestly, I get upset with it. But these same people, I don't understand why they're people who have refused to engage with the fact that the Palestinians are occupied. Right, they're living in an open-air prison and no one's done anything. And then they wonder why people take things into their own hands and fight, right? And they would have that level of anger and that level of pain. To deny that history is wrong and it's just going to lead to more pain, right? Isn't that just going to make the cycle go on for longer and longer? I cannot believe we've got, you know, I believe they've lit up Downing Street with the Israeli flag, and I don't understand that. I really don't understand it. It's not that I don't, it's so difficult to explain. It's not that I don't feel, it's awful when you see online and you see these innocent people and you see whole family killed, kids and parents, and you just feel sick, right? You just feel sick. But then you know that the media, like, because I follow a lot of stuff going on in Palestine, all the time there are children getting arrested, people being killed and being beaten, women being attacked, and they break into the mosques, they intimidate, and it's constant. And people don't seem to realise, you know, so they're seeing this as a sort of, there's no justification for any civilians being hurt at all, ever. Right, there just isn't. But it's not honest. It's not honest, because when Palestinians are routinely killed by a state, not by a group, by an actual state, and when this is happening over years and years and years, and we all see it, and we supply arms, we supply the weapons used. When the Palestinians are routinely killed, where's the coverage? You know, it's like people don't see them as human in the way they see Ukrainians as human. And I think that's the thing that's so horrifying. It's not to say that any, you know, when you see that kids have been hurt, that's the worst thing of all, isn't it? I feel, for me personally, I think that's the worst thing of all. You can't get more innocent than a child. And I see the outrage about this, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I know people who haven't been following the situation, of course, you see that, you're going to be like, that's horrific, that's right. You know, it's right to be like, that's horrific, and to feel grief and pain about that. But this is happening in Palestine all the time. And the media it never shows it. It never shows it when Palestinian families die, when the war crimes happen, when there's ethnic cleansing, when it's apartheid is happening. Who cries then? When is it that people will see the Palestinians as human? And even now, in a situation which is escalating and innocent people are just dying, right? People are saying, you've got politicians saying, we always stand with Israel, we stand with Israel. And I'm thinking, what's the aim here? What's the aim? Because what Israel are doing right now is bombing Gaza, which is a densely populated civilian population. So many children. And the news are presenting it as, oh, it's retaliatory strikes. But they didn't, if it's retaliatory to take out those children and those innocents and those people, then why is it not also described as retaliatory when the people broke through the barrier and when the people killed people, when they killed others? Like, it's not the same standards. It's not the same standards, and it's wrong. Like, I don't know, guys. I just find it really upsetting because it's like, I don't believe that the majority of people actually care about peace, because I can't see how the escalation of this and saying, oh, have more military stuff, Israel, you know, I can't see how that helps anybody there. I can't see how that does anything but just explode things. I can't understand that. To me, that's not peace and that's not honest. I don't understand why different places are putting up the Israeli flag everywhere. Like, I understand in terms of, if you strip the context out of it all, of course, you know, you've got a place where there are civilian deaths, of course, you show your support. This never happens with the Palestinians. Like, you put a Palestinian flag up when they're being ethnically cleansed, and it's like, oh no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. And it's like, why? Why is it that Ukrainians can fight against an occupier, right? And people cheer them on. And again, like, I kind of count myself out of that because I'm a pacifist. But these are people who aren't. These are people who do have Ukraine flags in their bios, and they do support, you know, armed struggle. And that's what they do that. You know, that's what they're fine with. They support the Ukrainians. They love to see that. They love to see the videos of Ukrainians fighting back against the Russians, right? And even in Ukraine, when you think about it, you've got ordinary people fighting, you've got some neo-Nazis fighting, you've got a group of people, and they're fighting the Russians who have come into Ukraine. For some reason, and I feel like we know what the reason is, the treatment that the Palestinians are getting is so different. So different. Like, our media isn't asking Ukraine, right, when they're fighting. We are not sitting there with Zelensky and saying, right, the first things first, do you condemn the fact that you got some Nazis fighting there? That's not the first thing they're being asked. And it also doesn't delegitimize the situation. I'm sorry, it doesn't. If you're against occupation, you're against occupation, and the double standards are on show. I think it's because Palestinians are regarded as brown. We've been told that, you know, we've been taught to think of Israel as being more Western and more like us, which shouldn't matter. And obviously they think of Palestinians as being Muslim, which is not always the case. There's a lot of Christians persecuted in Palestine. And it's like, I can't see how this helps. I cannot see how this helps. If they really wanted to be neutral people, right? I don't understand why. If people actually care about people and peace, right? And they want to be truly neutral, put both flags up. Put a peace stuff up somewhere, right? How is this helping? Because there's people who've been occupied who are now being bombed, and their families are being bombed as retaliation, right? By a whole state. And the rest of the world is posting the flag and saying, you know, of course Israel has a right to defend itself. But against what, though? What does that actually mean? Of course anyone has the right to defend themselves against someone trying to hurt them. Does it have the right to bomb occupied children? No. No, it doesn't. And what does that mean for the people that are in Palestine right now? More and more grief and more pain. And seeing that the world is so skewed and the world doesn't seem to care. How are those people going to grow up? What feelings are they going to hold? What are they going to resort to? Just on a psychological level, the pain breeds pain. It doesn't help. I can't understand it. I cannot understand it. And the way the media is portraying it is so wrong. It's so wrong. And it's hard to, I hope I've explained myself properly, you know, on this, because, you know, it's like, you don't want to be, oh, I got a message from my brother. That's good. The things I'm seeing is just awful. And, you know, like, really upsetting, like, horrific, like, young people, kids, families and stuff. And it's just horrible, sorry. Yeah, yeah, I just find it really, really distressing anyway. And it feels weird to even say but, like, it feels like you're dismissing it. I don't know how else to word it. I don't mean dismissing it, but what I'm saying is, like, that is awful. And kids are dying all the time in Palestine, constantly. Sorry if I'm getting stupidly upset, but, like, they're dying all the time. And we're not even acknowledging the fact that they're under occupation. I mean, just the fact that one power has the ability to turn off the electricity, right? To turn off the water, to shut the place down. The fact that in Israel, you know, you've got people fleeing and going away, you know, there is nowhere for people in Gaza to run. I don't know how to talk about that power imbalance in a way that is respectful of the people that have died. But it's there. That, you know, you've got an occupying force, you've got the occupied, and those are the facts. And if we're not even able to acknowledge that, and that history of occupation, and where it's all come from, then what are we doing? How does that help anyone? Like, how does that literally help anyone? How does that help, you know, I don't like the way that Israel tries to market itself as, like, you know, connected to being Jewish, you know, and that, you know, to be against Israel and their actions is to be against Jewish people. I don't like that at all. I think that's really manipulative. But by them doing that, does that not endanger Jewish people? I feel like that endangers Jewish people. Right? I just can't see this ending well for anybody. And it's just awful and heartbreaking. Like, and I guess I just wanted to encourage people to follow what's going on in Palestine and Gaza, and to see what's happening to the kids there. And I'm not saying that as some sort of gotcha, like, you know, oh, it's all right that this kid died, because no, it's horrible. No children should ever be dying. Like, it's just, you just want there to be peace, right? You just want people to be able to exist. But the bottom line is there's occupation happening. I don't see how this resolves when there's occupation, right? And the dishonesty of it just is wrong. I don't know. Hopefully I've articulated that okay. I don't know if I have, but it's like, I think it's the media thing, really. It's not so much the political. I'm not the most educated. I have a lot of feelings on it. I'm not the most educated, but what I will say is, just in terms of the media, it's like the Palestinians aren't people. And it's like the Israelis are. And I'm not trying to say, oh, the Israelis shouldn't be people either. No, I'm trying to say that the Palestinians should be people. They're not seen as people. They're attacked all the time. And it never makes the news. Never makes the news. You know, and then something like this happens and, you know, it does make the news. And it's like, people are so unaware. They're so unaware of what's going on, because we have failed to be honest about the occupation. We failed to do that, and don't we have a responsibility, especially with our history and our history in the region? You know, yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult situation, and I'm probably not getting this right, but I just find it very disturbing and distressing that the Palestinians are being collectively punished right now by their occupier. They can't go anywhere, and the world's like, oh yeah, we'll send some more arms over to Israel. Like, what do they want? What does the rest of the world want exactly? Because this can only lead to more pain and more death, you know. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for watching this. I don't know if I'll read the comments. I don't mean that in a sort of like ignorant way, as if I don't want to learn. I just mean that, like, it's a very troubling situation. I just want people to be okay. I just, you know, I don't know, it's upsetting when you see these things happen and you see the rest of the world, and it's like the gaslighting of the Palestinian people, which is what it is. I know it sounds kind of glib and silly to put that language on it, but like the gaslighting of the situation, the reframing of the situation, it's just an alarm bell, and it's constant. And I just can't see how this gets better. I can't see how this gets better. Israel are openly just bombing Gaza right now. There's nowhere for people to go. And I've even had people saying, oh, it's all right because they're calling up to say leave your building. Where are these people supposed to go? Where do they go to? Jeremy Corbyn, he was asked, they're all, of course, during this terrible situation, they're all trying to get Jeremy Corbyn. And his comment was that he believes there should be a complete ceasefire, right? Basically, people need to stop dying, ceasefire, de-escalation, is what he had to say about it. And they're hounding him because it's like, oh, so you don't condemn the attacks. And it's like, I don't believe any of you people actually care about the Israelis or the Palestinians, because why are you hyping it up? Why are you making it worse? How can there be a resolution until the Palestinians have their rights, have their basic human rights, and aren't occupied, and aren't being gaslit by the rest of the world? And if people don't want, you know, the Palestinians to turn to violence, for example, as occupied people, and is it even our business anyway? But it's like, well, why are we like acting like they're not going through what they're going through? Why are we making it so that every single peaceful movement is untenable? Why are we sending arms? Like, why are we doing that? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And it makes me really angry. Very, very angry, because it's now a situation where you can't talk about the occupation of the Palestinians without people saying, oh, but, you know, innocent people have been killed. And it's like, yes, that's absolutely awful. Would that be happening if there wasn't occupation? And what does occupation for so long do to people? What would it do to us if we're honest? Like, with humanity, thinking about Ukraine, thinking about here in Britain, or wherever you are. If you'd grown up under occupation, right? Kids being arrested, women having their headscarves pulled off, or whatever is, you know, part of your culture, mocked and you're demeaned. People are dying all the time. Buildings are just being destroyed. Schools, hospitals, they're turning off your electricity, your water. You have to cross a checkpoint for school. You've got soldiers coming in, frightening you all the time. You've got no control over what's going on whatsoever. You're being collectively punished when groups of people send their rockets. And then you've got a whole state with a very advanced military system firing back at you guys, many of whom wouldn't even have been involved in that at all. You know, people just dying all the time. If that was here, and if that lasted for as much as 2 weeks, I guarantee you the people of Britain would be, do you know what, we've got to fight back. We've got to band together, we've got to fight back. By any means necessary, you know, that's British spirit, right? That's the British spirit that we have here. I'm talking as a pacifist anyway, but that's the way we feel here. We very much glorify war, and we glorify, when we say there's a just cause for it, we very much glorify that here. We do, that's just something we do, unfortunately. You know, look at Remembrance Day, you know, it's like the noble sacrifice, and sometimes there's got to be violence to escape these things, and sometimes you've got to fight. That's very much how we feel here. To the extent that you've got people here who are at war with the idea of people using pronouns, you know, like, oh, we're at war with the woke people because they're infringing on our rights. So how would we react? Like, all the people you know, and I'm not saying we'd all be the same, people would react very differently. Now imagine that for just 2 weeks here. What do you think people would do if that happened, right? Putin, for example, if Putin came here and started doing that to us right now, what do you think people would do here? Do you think they'd be completely non-violent? Do you think it would be right to tell them not to be completely non-violent? Like, how do you think that would impact people? Because that's what the Palestinians have been living. And the truth is, all these people saying that, you know, oh, you know, they've ruined any chance for a peaceful resolution are very, very wicked and deceptive if they're people who haven't already been pushing for a peaceful resolution. They're acting like, oh, it was on the table, it was just about to happen and it's been ruined. It wasn't about to happen. Unless they are somebody who has routinely taken their part and said, you know, yes, there should be a peaceful resolution and the Palestinians need their rights immediately. The apartheid has to stop. The oppression has to stop. The occupation has to end. The Palestinians deserve their rights. Unless you're that person, then your words are hollow. They haven't ruined anything. It's like when they tell people of colour when they're, you know, the people are being racist to them, and then eventually they just like snap, you know, and they get angry, and they go, oh, you see, that's why people are racist. Because of your anger about racism, you're now a bad, you know, example of, somehow you represent all black people now, and your reaction, which is a human reaction, represents everyone. And if a bad person, you know, if there's a bad person among you, a bad black person does something evil, then I'm afraid you've lost all of our support, you know. And in fact, you know, maybe slavery is a two sides issue. Like, that's how ridiculous it is. It's that mentality. I don't know. I just want people to be okay, you know, and not to keep seeing people dying, not to see Palestinians keep dying, and not to see Israelis keep dying, and like, just for some truth. Just for some truth. And I don't know. I can't even imagine what it's like to be occupied for that long. I can't even imagine it. I'm sitting here, you know, safe, you know, and it's probably, you know, I can't even imagine, you know, that the things I'm thinking right now and, you know, how I deal with things, probably not. Probably not. You can't say, can you, how you would react? But occupation is wrong. And I feel like those two things, you can have great love for human life and desperately, desperately want people to be okay, especially innocent people. But they're making it so that can't coexist with wanting Palestine free. And I think that's wrong. I just think that's wrong, and I think that's going to make it worse. I think that's going to backfire terribly on so many people. So many people. People who aren't even connected to it even, you know. I just think it's... yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching this. Sorry it's so long. I know it's a very, very heated issue, but I can only say what I feel. And I do feel strongly that I should say something and make this, just to say that, like, I do see it. I do see, and I would encourage you to see what is happening to the Palestinians daily. You know, just to see that situation and to understand the depth of it and the years behind it and the generations and the daily pain. You know? I don't know. I hope Palestine manages to be free. I hope that all the people are safe and that no one has to die, and just that, you know, the occupation ends and the Palestinians have their rights, and there can be some reality where people can just live freely and just be safe and just be people, you know. Anyway, thank you for watching. I love you loads, and I'll see you really soon, and I'll go through the proper Harry and Meghan stuff that you're expecting, which I have planned for, but I couldn't, you know, I'd seen so much stuff today that's just so distressing, she says from the room where she's completely safe. But yeah, the media are dodgy on this. Very, very dodgy. I think it ties into what we talk about here. I think the media are misrepresenting the history of this issue. Does not serve anybody, frankly. Like, it doesn't serve anybody. Genuinely doesn't serve anyone. I can't see any innocent person that's served by that of any sort. Anyway, thank you so much. I love you loads. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe. I hope your families and your loved ones are safe and you're able to experience peace, and that you have strength, and just that you're okay. Every single person watching this, I hope that for you. Okay, love you loads, and I'll see you really soon. Bye. Okay, I'm back. I realised that I had something else to say. I had begun to edit this, and I'm still following what's going on, and basically I've just seen that the Israeli war minister has... okay, so he's basically saying that they need to block electricity, food and fuel to Gaza. He says that everything is closed, that they're fighting human animals, and they will act accordingly. And I just wanted to... I wanted to phrase something a little bit better. I will possibly write this in the description as well, actually. As someone who is non-violence, that's my belief system, this is what I kind of wanted to say, and I feel like I didn't say. So if you are truly non-violence and pro-peace, then you have to acknowledge that oppression, occupation, ethnic cleansing and apartheid are all violence. Those things are violence. They're not neutral things. They cannot possibly be neutral things. So when I talk about, like, non-violence and my belief system, the reactions of those people to occupation is not the only violence. It's wrong to... Occupation is not neutral. Occupation is violence. It's daily pain, and that violence, that ongoing violence, so normalised, and the world just turning the other way, is going to breed more violence, and more innocent people are going to get hurt. When I say I'm against violence, I'm not sitting here, you know, trying to just say everything needs to stay as it is, because that's the problem. Things are not fine as they are. Someone worded this so well earlier. I think I saw it on the news, and someone said about, you know, people are talking about they want the state of calm back in Israel, and I agree completely in the sense of, like, people shouldn't be getting hurt. You know, you don't want to see anything like that. But that place of neutral calm everyone's coming from has never been neutral calm for the Palestinians. It's always been violence. It's always been pain, and that's not a neutral place to be, is it? So I just wanted to add that and just say that, you know, I'm non-violent. And as part of that non-violence is why I'm against occupation and against apartheid and against ethnic cleansing, because those things are violence. And to try and pretend that they're not, and that they're ever just neutral and morally okay, they're not. Yeah, just awful things coming out of Gaza right now. Yeah. Okay, lots of love, and hope you're okay. Right, love you. Bye.